Hey everyone, it's me, John, again. Thank you so much for joining me on this special edition of BrainScratch Searchlight, a Searchlight update. This is about the case of Zuzu Verk. I know many of you out there were expecting a case cracked today, but I believe that this case is on the verge of being cracked. However, unfortunately, we don't have a few key pieces of information, and there's still a lot to happen before I would consider this case totally and truly closed. However, there are a lot of developments for us to go through, so let's jump right in and get started. For anyone not familiar, I will have a link down below to the original Searchlight about Zuzu, so you can check that out for yourself and get caught up. But the brief story on it is this is a person that went missing in October of 2016, and she was having a relationship, kind of a rough on-again, off-again relationship with a guy named Robert Fabian. At the time that she went missing, he was pretty much the last person to be known to have been with her. So a lot of eyes kind of fell towards him. Now, they've had a grand jury actually convene on this case. He apparently was interviewed during that process and didn't offer a whole lot of information. Her family came out saying that they didn't learn anything from the grand jury trial that happened on this. However, we do have some very recent developments, some very big developments in this case, and that's why I wanted to be sure to get this episode done sooner rather than later. The first development to happen as we jump over to newswest9.com, and this happened a few weeks ago, January 22nd of 2017. Christopher Estrada is a friend of Robert Fabian's, and we do know that they at least had some communication on the morning in question, the morning that Zuzu went missing. Chris seemed to be acting very strange that day. He kept bugging a friend of his who owned a car detailing place to try to fit his car into a schedule to get it detailed that day. He bugged that friend, I think, 3 times if I remember correctly. So a lot of us had some suspicions around Chris's involvement with Robert, and through that grand jury process, by the end of that, Chris came out and was telling the media that he was now being considered a person of interest or a suspect in this case. So I know many of us definitely have some questions about his involvement. But a few weeks ago, January 22nd, 2017, authorities say early Sunday morning, police attempted to perform a traffic stop after Estrada failed to stop at the intersection of West Avenue E and 5th Street. The officer turned on his emergency lights to stop Estrada, but police say he accelerated and continued west on Avenue E. After a short pursuit, Estrada stopped and tried to hide his vehicle near the railroad tracks on the 800 block of West Holland. So what we have here is essentially a driving while intoxicated, a DWI, but he also tried to evade the police. They eventually caught him. And what came out of that, we can see the following day on January 23rd from this article at CBS7.com. Chris Estrada bonds out after being charged with DWI and evading arrest. His bond was set as a total of $5,000, $2,000 for the DWI and $3,000 for evading arrest. And he appeared before Justice of the Peace Gilbert Valenzuela. Remember that name for me, Justice of the Peace Gilbert Valenzuela. Now, when I first heard about this piece of news, I was hopeful that now that police had a different charge against Chris, that maybe there would be some type of plea bargain, maybe some type of, hey, we can make this go away if you help us out with this whole Robert Fabian thing. Tell us what you do know about what happened that night. I don't know if anything like that truly occurred. When I originally heard of the most recent developments, I thought, oh, I'm wondering, did Chris spill the beans? Did we finally get some information out of him? But now looking back on it all, I don't think that is necessarily the case. And another interesting twist, I have seen reports just as of today that Chris apparently has left Texas and is now living in Arizona. Personally, I don't think moving to Arizona is going to help his case much if they do finally get some charges against him, but we will see about that as we go through the news here. Moving over to DallasNews.com. So what happened on Friday, February 3rd? A U.S. Border Patrol agent stumbled upon a grave while servicing equipment and called the Brewster County Sheriff's Office about 10 a.m. The remains were found just northwest of Alpine, the town where Verk was last seen in October. They're trying to not disclose the exact location of where these were found. I believe that they were found on private property. And of course, they don't want people going out to that scene right now. They're still processing it all. But from what I've heard, it's only a few miles, like literally 2 or 3 miles outside of Alpine. Brewster County Sheriff Ronnie Dodson said law enforcement personnel on foot searched the brushy area Saturday in hopes of recovering additional evidence. And here is a photo from CW33.com of the scene. You can see that has been taped off. Texas Rangers have arrived on scene and are currently processing evidence at the scene. Brewster County Sheriff's personnel, along with Alpine Police, are assisting. The evidence collection and processing may take several days. The remains are expected to be taken to University of North Texas for identification. As of when I'm filming this, they still have not confirmed the identity of these remains. I'm filming this actually on Monday. If the information comes out before I post it on Tuesday, I will add a note in the description box below as well as something on the screen right about here. Jumping over to MirrorDaily.com, it looks like things moved rather quickly. The boyfriend of Zuzu Verk arrested for tampering with evidence. So literally the day after this body is located, on Saturday morning, on the Alpine Police's official Facebook page, they have a post saying that they have arrested Robert Fabian. He's been charged with fabricating physical evidence and concealing a human body. Very hard to know what information they do have, but with that specific charge, I would say they found something at the location that ties directly to him, or they have previously searched his home, possibly the home of some relatives of his, and found information or evidence at those locations that tie to this location. I don't believe they would file this specific charge without having something pretty concrete that ties him specifically to that location. And not having the identity yet, not knowing that this is indeed Zuzu, that doesn't seem to be part of the equation in this current charge. They are not charging him for murder at this point. They are charging him specifically for hiding that body and fabricating physical evidence. When asked about the reason they've made this arrest, the police declared that Fabian supplied false evidence. More specifically, some of the clues found in the West Texas shallow grave do not match Mr. Fabian's testimony. Since the body has not yet been identified, the man was charged only with providing false physical evidence. It's not yet clear if the man will also be charged with first-degree murder, taking into account that the authorities did not find any conclusive evidence which confirms that Fabian murdered Zuzu Verk. And it goes on to talk about a search warrant they executed on his house that says they did not find any incriminating evidence at that location. I believe that they're probably hoping that forensic testing on the actual body will help tell a bit more of the story of what actually occurred that night and possibly implicate Robert Fabian in doing this. Jumping over to dfw.cbslocal.com, we see the title here, Autopsy Could Identify Remains as Missing Keller Woman. Apparently, someone has interviewed Fabian's sister, Jocelyn Carrillo. She told local CBS station KSOA that she doesn't believe her brother committed a crime. Quote, "The only question that keeps going through my mind is if the body hasn't been identified, why was he arrested?" And I think that the best way to answer that is just to talk about the evidence that they did find. It doesn't matter if this was Zuzu or not, if they found evidence that directly connects Robert to being at the scene at the time of that body being hidden at that scene. And that's the only charge that is currently levied against him. So it seems like his sister is trying to increase the scope of this charge to murdering Zuzu Verk at this time. That is not what the charge is. Obviously, authorities are being very selective with how they're charging him, and for good reason. They don't want it to get thrown out and have him released and possibly flee. Now, a bit contrary to what we heard in the last article, here we hear police had searched Fabian's home before the remains were found and said information gathered then and later led them to take action. Alpine Police Chief Russell Scown said, quote, "We had evidence to begin with. We recovered more evidence at the scene, and so we felt the time was right to make that arrest. I can't tell you which article has it right, but we have one that says they didn't find anything incriminating at his house, and now we have an article that says, yes, they actually did find something at his house that ties him to this body being hidden. So once again, this is why I didn't make this a case cracked. We don't know what piece of information this is. We don't know what other information might be found yet that's going to connect him to this, possibly tell the story of the crime that happened here. There's a lot of questions that remain to be answered in this whole thing. Jumping over to CBS7.com, we can see, and this is news that just happened this morning, Monday, February 6th, bond for Robert Fabian set at $500,000. On top of having to provide a bond for $500,000, if he makes bond, he will have several conditions, including reporting daily to the Brewster County Sheriff's Office. He will literally have to report every day to the Sheriff's County office before 5 p.m. as part of his condition of release. Outside of that, he'll have to surrender his passport. From what I've heard, he doesn't actually have a passport, so that's not going to be an issue. They are a bit concerned because this area is very close to the border of Mexico. He does have family in Mexico. I do think it's reasonable to assume that he might be a flight risk if he is indeed involved in all of this. And we find out in this article that Fabian was magistrated by Justice of the Peace Gilbert Valenzuela. There's that name I told you to remember. Apparently he is working both Chris Estrada's DWI case as well as overseeing what Robert Fabian has been facing so far. And once again, I just have to say, setting his bond, his bail amount at $500,000 like that, they're obviously trying to keep him contained. I also believe this might speak to some of the information that they let the judge know about in terms of what they're charging him with. I don't think you would get a judge to set this kind of bail amount without some piece of information that is leading them to believe that these are very serious, real charges that are going to have a good chance of sticking once this hits a prosecution stage. So it's hard, guys, because we're looking at this from outside. They're doing their job. They're still investigating. They're being very tight-lipped about the information. There's some coming out, but it's kind of at a drizzle right now, so we can only speculate. But the signs that I'm seeing are all very strong indicators that they have, for the specific charges they filed to date, they have some key information, and it looks like the judge agrees that they have at least a reasonable cause to keep this guy potentially in a cell. You know, for a $500,000 bond, I think from the way I understand it, I know that you can get bonds for much less than the amount of money that bail has been set at. I think it's like $1 for every 10 that would have to be raised and given to the bond company as insurance, basically, that he's going to not flee. And if he does flee for some reason, then the rest would become due to whoever does that. You're talking about potentially $50,000 that his family would have to scratch up to give to that bond company. And then he gets out and he basically has to check into the sheriff's office every day before 5 p.m. So is that going to happen or not? You know, $50,000 is a lot of money, but I don't think it's impossible. So there might be a chance that he does meet that bail, but we'll see. Over at bigcountryhomepage.com, we see an article that was posted today, February 6th, but it's actually talking about an event that happened on Saturday. Vigil for college student held after human remains found in West Texas. The remains have not been identified, but police say they coincide with Zuzu. Her father, mother, and brother attended a prayer vigil Saturday night to honor their daughter. Glenn Verk, her father, issued the following statement on Sunday. As our family awaits the likely news that our worst fears have been realized, our sorrow has grown alongside a sense of relief from the constant state of not knowing. Zuzu has been a bright light in our lives. It has been our greatest challenge to go forward these last months without her joyous laugh, fierce idealism, and heart-melting smile, knowing we may all never have them again. We could not have maintained our strength without the comforting embrace of our family, friends, and community. Lori, Miles, and I are forever grateful for your calls, notes, hugs, homes, and more. We will be forever changed but not ruined. We appreciate your respect and time as we begin the healing process, As we carry on, we look forward to the day we witness justice delivered for Zuzu. And that's really where it's at right now. Just a very well-written and sentimental piece, and I really feel for their family. As a matter of fact, I'm going to keep an eye out for any type of memorial fund that they might have in Zuzu's name. I will make a donation to that on behalf of Searchlight and all of my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much. And I'll be sure to also tweet about that as soon as I find it. We're still a little bit early. They have to get a positive identification. We don't know how much more testing might have to be done against the remains before they can have a proper burial service. But at least for her family, they are able to move forward into that grieving process and have at least some of the answers about what happened to their daughter. And justice is the next thing. And in this case, I don't think these are the only charges we're going to see. I think it's very likely that Robert is going to be charged with more, possibly including the murder of Zuzu. Outside of that, I think there's a very good chance we're going to see some charges come alongside for his friend Chris Estrada, who might have participated in helping to cover this up. And there might even be some other charges potentially for family members of his. There was some contact made between him and his brother-in-law that night. It seems like he borrowed a truck from his brother-in-law. It's starting to look, just looking at this picture as an outsider, it's starting to look like that truck might have been used in the transportation of the body to this location. And I did also see on one news story that police had searched his sister and brother-in-law's home and recovered a couple of shovels as well as soil samples from their backyard. I am just curious if they're going to do testing on those soil samples, testing on the shovels, and try to use that to place Robert out at that location where the body was discovered. Like I said, still a lot to go on here, but if any of the people around Robert were truly helping him try to cover this up, I hope that they also have to face justice in some way, because it's pretty unnecessary from my point of view. You have a guy and a girl she's 21, he's 26. They're struggling in their relationship. It's just, there's better ways to handle these things. And it appears, from what we know from the downstairs neighbor hearing them that night, it sounds like someone yelled at someone else. Then he hears a thud in the middle of the night. It just feels like a domestic dispute gone wrong type situation. And I know it's a bit early to call it there. But if that is truly the case, anyone that helped cover this up, I hope that they do have to face justice in this, and that Zuzu's family truly does find peace after that is served. I know that this is still a lengthy process for them, but it seems to be moving in the right direction, which is a little bit of light at a very long and dark tunnel. So I will keep you guys updated as there are further developments on this case. I do expect there to be more. I would love to do an official case cracked on this case, but we still have the whole judicial process to go through. That could literally be a year away, possibly more. So I just wanted to get this update out to all of you, and a quick thank you to all of you wonderful brain scratchers that let me know about this. My mailbox was blowing up, my Twitter was blowing up. There were so many of you that were reporting this information to me pretty much as quickly as it was hitting the news outlets. So I really appreciate you guys being part of this awesome network that allows me to do all this. So if you sent me a tip on this, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Take care, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you on the next show on the Lord and Arts channel.